Welcome to the Mash and Soul Podcast, UFC edition.
Hustling, 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 hustling. Every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling, every day I'm hustling.
What a fight Saturday night was. It had everything. It was just a great match. It had drama. It had theatrics. It was absolutely magnificent. UFC 229 was just everything that they sold it to be. Welcome to the Mash and Soul Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Mash, and with me is my co-host, Soul. How you doing, Soul?
Doing amazing, man. What an amazing weekend, an amazing card, and of course, an amazing main event. I'm still on the high off of Saturday night, and I'm ready to go, man. Ready to chat this up.
So am I, man. So am I. And today we actually have a special guest. He will be our UFC specialist, Shafat Chaudhary. How are you today, Shafat?
I'm super pumped, man. That event was last weekend, but I'm still on a high from that event. It was amazing.
It really was, man. It
Lived
really
up
was.
to the hype.
It really was. All right, man. Let's get it started. So Shafat, so tell me, what is your overall perception and view of the fight and everything that just happened?
Well, I mean, aside from the main event, I thought UFC 229 it was the best card in UFC history. Majority of these fights ended up with finishes. And if they weren't finishes, the decisions, they weren't boring decisions. These were all competitive fights. I mean, we saw wars that went on. I mean, this was an absolute treat for UFC fans, hardcore fans, and casual fans that were tuning in to watch UFC for the first time. The sport definitely gained popularity after this past weekend.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know what's funny is, like, if you were watching a fight, and I think this was the one fight where there was a lot of new people who started watching this fight. A lot of people, this was their first fight. And right after the fight, what did we see? We heard, "Oh my God, this is so terrible." By all the UFC people, this is a tragedy. But this is what we wanted, right? This is what we expect from UFC. This is the sport of savagery, right? We don't want gentlemen for this sport. This is the NFL. We're not worried about concussions. We want to see chaos. We want to see people beat each other up.
No, these guys are prize fighters, man. These aren't honorable, noble guys. These are prize fighters. This is the hurt business right here.
Right? Exactly.
This is the hurt business. We want to see savagery.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think this was, without a doubt, for me, my favorite UFC card of all time.
100%.
And the funny part was, when we were talking about when we did the preview last week, when we were going through the card, we were kind of like, it's a decent card. Obviously the main event had a lot of hype, but the rest of the card kind of had some good matchups. But man, I think it's way surpassed what our expectations were. The Derrick Lewis, Alexander Volkov fight was amazing. Derrick Lewis freaking was getting his butt kicked the entire fight for 3 rounds. And then within like the last 10 or 11 seconds, he comes out the knockout. As Shaf mentioned last week, Dominic Reyes, who's a great prospect, put up a great performance against OSP. And so that was really a great showing. And the Tony Ferguson, Anthony Pettis fight, I mean, this gets lost with, all the drama that happened with Khabib and Conor. I mean, that was an amazing performance by both guys.
Yeah, it really.
And Tony Ferguson, remember, is coming off a major knee injury.
Yeah.
This guy, they said he was supposed to be out on the sideline for 1 year. This guy took 6 months to rehab. That's incredible. And with the performance he had, truly admirable. This guy did not take a step back.
Yeah, and it wasn't truly easy, right? In the first few rounds, it looked like Pettis was going to win. And I remember we were sitting there like, oh my God, is an upset going to happen? But then Ferguson just turned it on and just messed him up.
I mean, if from last week's episode, I was telling Sohel that's Tony Ferguson's problem. He can obviously dominate an opponent, but he always has that first round where he's a very slow starter, and we saw that again against Anthony Pettis, where he's always susceptible to getting caught. and he did get caught. But this guy is a true warrior. He always finds a way to persevere and finds a way to win.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, I mean, I think generally speaking, Tony Ferguson had control for most of that fight. But when he got tagged by Pettis, I mean, I honestly thought, I was like, oh man, he's done.
Yeah.
Because he got tagged hard. And once Anthony Pettis got, I think he had full mount, I thought it was over. I thought he was going to pound him out, and that was going to be it. But as you said, Tony Ferguson prevailed, and it really showed an great all-around game, right? Because he was able to kind of survive on the ground, get back up, and he just came right back at Anthony Pettis. And
yeah, he was relentless. He put the pressure on him. He drove him. He put his back to the fence and was just pushing forward the whole time, even after being like knocked down like that.
So Shafa, do you think like a guy like Tony Ferguson, he gets actually motivated by kind of being down first? Like he needs that. He needs that.
He's actually one of those fighters that has to get punched around and like knocked down a little bit, and then he kind of wakes up, and that like brings out his competitive spirit.
Yeah. I mean, he looks absolutely crazy. Like I just look at it.
He is a crazy mofo.
He just
He's one
looks
of those
crazy.
guys you hear about that trains till he like passes out at the gym. He's one of those crazy guys.
I mean, he looks like a vampire. He's got these like big ears, and he just looks crazy. I wouldn't want to mess with him. I really wouldn't.
He's one ugly motherfucker.
Yeah, he's definitely not pretty. He's definitely not pretty.
Like post fight, he's talking about UFC. I clean up well, I'm marketable. No, you're not marketable at all, man. You're one ugly mofo. You're one ugly mofo.
Yeah. And can I also just
some suit that looks like you bought it from like Caracos or some shit? Like, nah, man. What the hell are you?
He got that
not
3 for
marketable one bit. The UFC does not want you to be a champion.
Yo, don't hate on Caracos. 3 for like $150. Come on.
Yeah, 100. That's Mash's favorite spot. Come on, don't hate on Caracos. But hey, another thing that obviously the Tony Ferguson Pettis fight was great. So the funny part was, when Derrick Lewis knocked out Volkov, I texted Shaf and I was like, dude, that was crazy. And the first thing Shaf says, yes, that was amazing. He's like, wait till you hear his post-fight interview. It's going to be amazing.
I'm actually so happy that Derrick Lewis they gave him the platform. They put him on a major pay-per-view card. If you guys have the time, watch all of Derrick Lewis's fights. It's not his fights that's the best part. It's his post-fight interviews that are, like, hilarious. This interview, believe it or not, was not even the funniest interview that he had. If you watch his other interviews, this guy says the most outrageous stuff. But the problem is they always put him on, like, fight cards like Omaha, Nebraska, or, like, on, like, like FS1, not on pay-per-view. So I'm glad that guy got his platform, got his exposure on a major pay-per-view card. And let me tell you something. Before this UFC fight, this guy maybe had, like, maybe at most 100,000 Instagram followers. The guy after this UFC 229 event is over 1 million Instagram followers now.
Wow.
That's how much, that's the popularity he gained. And you know what? He deserves it. He's a funny guy, he's got power. He's charismatic as hell. I mean, look, after this fight, he just earned himself a title shot against Daniel Cormier.
Yeah, he did. Although, I guess we'll get to that in a little bit because UFC 230 has been nothing short of a disaster trying to put it together. But the fact that they're doing that 3 weeks from now, after he just got beat up for 3 rounds, I think is crazy. But, definitely something that we'll talk about. That whole card is just that. I don't know what Dana White's doing, but it's going to be hard to live up to UFC 229, that's for sure.
So that's usually the trend that happens. Anytime you have a big card that features Conor McGregor, usually what happens is the other cards usually suffer after that. You don't get as many viewers for the next few cards. But like I said, this card was, a lot of casuals watched this card. It was like no other card ever seen before. This might, attract new fans to watch future cards without even Conor McGregor.
Do you think, like, in terms of, like, marketing and branding, like, UFC could even do a better job than, like, boxing? Like you said, he had 100,000 followers. Now he has 1 million followers. Is this one of the things that's going to take UFC to the next level?
So, so Conor McGregor is a brand, right? The UFC needs to build more fighters. I mean, Conor McGregor is Conor McGregor, but the UFC needs to go back to the days where they have superstars like Anderson Silva, George St. Pierre. They were kind of lacking that for the past few years until Conor McGregor came along. But, now they have Khabib Nurmagomedov, who basically pounded the UFC's golden boy. And just like Derrick Lewis, Khabib had about 2 million Instagram followers before the UFC event. He's close to 12 million followers now after UFC 229. So once the UFC can build a few brand name fighters like that, yeah, the sport will grow just like boxing.
Yeah, and obviously moving forward, the card was great, and I think that was the great part about Conor and Khabib. It was a great opportunity for these other guys on the main card to showcase their skills, and thankfully they put on a great performance. And but of course, the main event was the main attraction, right? And man, I'm going to be honest. From my opinion, I haven't been as jacked up for a sporting event in a long time. And man, did these guys deliver both inside and outside the ring. Dude. Absolutely crazy. And, obviously, as you guys know, there was the huge melee after the fight. But before the fight, outside of the ring, there was a fight inside the ring. And it surely delivered. And, I know that we talked about it on the preview as far as their contrasting styles. Conor obviously being more of a striker, stand-up guy, and Khabib obviously being one of the best grapplers. Should have said the best grappler, and I would say just wrestler grappler in the UFC. And I think clearly his style prevailed. And it was an interesting fight. Obviously, just going round by round. First round, and I guess Shaf, you could chime in on this as well. I did, obviously most of the round, I think within a few seconds, Khabib went for that single leg takedown. He shot right away, and he kind of had full mouth for most of the round, and he didn't get a lot of shots in. But I will say this: I did think that Conor did do a decent job trying to fending him off as far as the ground and pound. He did have. It was just full guard, right? I mean, it wasn't like he was getting his face pounded in. He had decent control. And he did a decent job playing defense.
Yeah, Conor McGregor looked pretty good in the first round. I mean, although he was down and controlled, he didn't take any significant damage in that first round. He did an admirable job compared to most of Khabib's opponents that are down on the ground. They're usually helpless, but Conor McGregor definitely held his own. I mean, it shows that that work he does with his jiu-jitsu coach, Dylan Dennis, really paid off. He looked pretty good on the ground. And Khabib, if you notice that first round, I was talking about it last week, how if he does a clinch takedown, he's going to move forward. He could get caught with a shot from Conor McGregor. He didn't go for a clinch takedown. He went for a traditional wrestling takedown, that single leg takedown, whatever. And he wasn't successful initially with that single leg takedown. They were on the ground scrambling, but once Khabib has a hold of anything, a finger, a leg, anything, he'll find a way to get control, and that's exactly what he did.
Well, Shaf, let me ask you this question. How was Conor supposed to beat Khabib? How do you beat Khabib? He's never lost. So how do you do it?
His only way of beating Khabib was within that first round. Within that first round, catch him with that left hand, but Khabib was very smart. He didn't go for that clinch takedown. He went for a takedown from a distance, whatever, and went straight to the legs as opposed to being upright near. He kind of avoided getting hit with that left hand. He went for that takedown, going for his legs, and kind of created a scramble position. So Khabib did the right thing, whatever. He avoided Conor's left hand, and then from there he had pure control. Kind of taken away from Conor's game.
Now, any point after the first round, did you think Conor had a chance to win the fight, or did you think it was over right after the first?
So when you take someone down, right, usually that's an exhausting position for the guy that's in the bottom position. So just Khabib controlling Conor like that is gonna take some juice out of his arms and whatnot. But Conor McGregor still has some power in that left hand in the second round, and thank God. I mean, if you watch the second round, who was the guy that got the knockdown? It was Khabib with that overhand right.
Right.
I mean, not many people saw that happening. That definitely caught all of us by surprise. And from there, it was all Khabib.
Yeah, Khabib's just an animal, though. He's just a pure animal. I mean,
He fights with reckless abandonment.
Okay. All right, and moving on to round two. I think for round one, I think Shaf, it was pretty easy to say. I think it was unanimous. It was probably a 10-9 for Khabib, right?
Definitely a 10-9.
Yeah, it's because there wasn't a lot of strikes on either side, but Khabib kept most of the control for that round. So I think those consensus 10-9, good start, kind of set the tone a bit for the fight moving forward. And then round two came about. And I'll say this, and I think this is a big distinction, and you can tell me it's different or not, Chef, if you agree. Khabib's striking and his striking game was much better this fight compared to the Al Iaquinta fight. In the Al Iaquinta fight, he was kind of keeping his chin up and he was kind of straight up. This fight, he really kept good knee bend and really kept good balance. And another really key point is he was staying in and out, right? He was kind of going in and out within range of Conor, and he did a great job of escaping a lot of his attacks.
So you know what? I'm going to actually respectfully disagree with you on this.
Really?
I don't think his striking improved at all. It's actually the same. But you know what happened, right? It's because Conor McGregor was so concerned with that takedown because he was controlled for that first round. His hands, because when you're trying to defend a takedown, he kept his hands down, actually.
That is true.
Because he kept his hand down, that's how Khabib was able to land that overhand right that caught him by surprise. Because he was expecting him to shoot for a takedown. Instead, he surprised him and shot him. He gave him an overhand right, and that's how he knocked down Conor McGregor. He was way too concerned with the takedown, as he should be. And that's how a wrestler can be so dominant in MMA. Because they dictate the fight.
100%. And that's what I was going to get to too, is when he landed that overhand punch. I mean, it was a thing of beauty, man. It was so fast and so crisp.
Unexpected.
It's totally unexpected. And I think Conor looked like he was completely caught off guard.
Yeah, he wasn't expecting that. He was expecting him to shoot for a double leg again. But then this is how Khabib, he changed up his game. He said, you know what? I'm going to pretend to shoot for the double leg, but instead I'm going to take a chance and try to land the overhand right. And then from there on, obviously Conor McGregor, once you get knocked down like that, you don't fully recover. So he chased him and he was able to get him on the ground after that. And after that, it was a complete pounding, a 10-8 round from there.
He really lived up to the smash your face, I'm going to change your face quotes that he had leading up to the fight.
There were definitely times where we were all thinking that, the ref might stop this fight.
Yeah. I thought it was over. When he was on top, like when he was standing up and he was just throwing haymakers at him, I thought Herb Dean was going to call the fight.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't really defending himself intelligently at one point.
No, he wasn't. And some people were also saying that Conor was trying to gas out Khabib. I don't think that's true.
No one wants to take punches just to gas someone out. But no, that's definitely false.
Totally false. I think he was just getting smashed and he just didn't know what to do, right?
But you know what? If that was any other UFC fighter and any other UFC event, the ref would have called this fight off. Because it's the UFC's golden boy, and because this is such a big card, they let the fight go on, whatever. They let him, they let the guys keep fighting, which I kind of like because, everyone paid money to see this. They didn't just the ref wasn't overzealous to stop the fight. He let Conor McGregor try to survive.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think Herb Dean just in general has a reputation for letting fights go on probably longer than they should.
Well, Herb Dean is he's two extremes, and this is his problem is either he stops the fight too prematurely.
Oh yeah, lets it go.
Or he lets it go for too long. Like the guy doesn't have any balance, and that's why a lot of fighters don't want Herb Dean as a referee.
Yeah, and I think he also, and I guess we'll get into this with the third and fourth round, I mean, Conor was caught cheating so many times in this fight.
Yeah.
With obviously the illegal knees and
Hooking his toe against the fence.
Over and over. Even when he was told to stop, he just did it again and Herb didn't say anything. Pulling on the gloves, as you said. Just a ton of illegal stuff. Yeah, it was just ridiculous. But, you know, again, it's their golden boy and Conor was very, very lenient on that. But round 2 was an easy 10-8. Could be dominated that round. And then round 3 was interesting and a lot of different viewpoints on this. Some people say that because Khabib kind of stayed mostly, it didn't really go too much, didn't try to shoot too much and try to stay trading shots with Conor. And some people think that he almost took the round off. Yeah,
it's safe to say. I mean, we were just talking about it. I mean, he was grounding and pounding him that second round, trying to finish him. I mean, quite possibly he might have burned his arms out. And if you burn your arms out, you can't get a takedown then. You're not going to have the grip strength to get a takedown. So that's probably the reason why he didn't go for any takedowns that third round. He was probably trying to get the oxygen flowing back in his arms after he burned them out from the second round.
Yeah, his arms
you could say it's like kind of like cruise control almost.
Yeah, for sure. It was his arms and his legs. And, you know, if any of you who roll over or wrestle, when you're doing that for a good 3-4 minutes, I mean, it takes a lot out of you and all the blood kind of course, in rushing your body and especially your legs kind of feel heavy. And he was kind of almost shaking it off, right? Like, and that's part of the reason why he was kind of playing more of a stand-up game.
Yeah, and that's what you could say. He took the round off, almost.
Yeah, which I think it kind of surprised everybody. And he was surprised, like Joe Rogan, and everyone was like, "Well, what is he doing?"
Everyone's like, "Why isn't he going for the takedown?"
Yeah, but I guess it was all part of his plan. But he didn't get knocked out though, right? He did a good job of trading blows with Conor, and you know, I think it was a 10-9 to Conor, but not by much.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at it. Some might say 10-9 for Khabib because he looked like he was pressing forward. If you look by like, if we look at the fight metric, I mean, the strikes were kind of similar, the amount of strikes that were landed. But yeah, it could go 10-9 for Conor. It can go 10-9 for Khabib. But Khabib, you could say the third round was never in danger of getting knocked out. Or did he? He didn't take any like significant strike that wobbled him.
Absolutely not. I agree. And as I said, I do think Khabib did do a much better job as far as stand-up game with his defense. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I think he did a good job slipping punches. Again, keeping his distance. So as compared to some of his previous fights, I think he did a good job of that. And then moving on to the fourth round, you know, he looked real fresh.
Yeah, he got his win back.
Yep, he got his win back, and he kind of stuck to the stand-up game a little bit and kind of waited for Conor to be a little hesitant, and which he was really the whole fight. And as you said, that's why he was kind of keeping his hands down, worried about Khabib shooting. And he took his shot. I think it was about like maybe a minute into the round. And once he took a shot, he got him down. It was over. And
he timed it very perfectly. As soon as Conor McGregor had his hands up, about to go for a punch, Conor McGregor went for the double leg takedown. And from there, once he got him on the ground, he took his back and did a neck crank. And he didn't even have it fully. He didn't have his arms fully under the chin. It was basically on the jaw. So if he held on to it any longer, he could have broken Conor McGregor's jaw. That's why Conor McGregor just tapped out.
I will tell you straight up, I have gotten, doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I have gotten a rear naked chokehold, and I have gotten a neck crank as well. And the neck crank is a million times more brutal. It hurts way more than the rear naked chokehold. So that was a savage ending by Khabib. And of course, as everyone knows, he tapped out. And Khabib is still the undisputed lightweight champion of the world.
No questions.
No questions whatsoever. No asterisks. And we thought that was it.
Yeah, I mean, before we get to that, I'm really glad that we actually touched on the fight itself. Because it was such a shame that from Saturday night, the focus was not on the actual fight. It was on what happened after the fight. And before we can talk about what happened after the fight, Khabib deserves all the credit in the world for the flawless performance he had.
Absolutely, man. He had an all-around great fight. His stand-up was much better. Obviously, his grappling and his ground and pound was on point. And hey, we talk so much about Conor being such a great striker and all. Who had the best strike of the fight? It was Khabib in the second round. That overhand was nasty, and it set the tone for the rest of the fight. And it was probably one of the only real significant strikes of the fight. Right? Conor never really tagged him once.
No, not really. Conor McGregor never had him in danger.
Yeah, he didn't, and it was a dominant performance. But of course, it did not stop there. And Mash, I guess I want to ask you, when you were watching when the fight ended, what was going through your mind, and what transpired thereafter?
Well, one, I was really looking forward to the post-fight interview. That's the one thing I missed. I wanted to hear Khabib say, "I may do tap like chicken." I really want to hear him say that. I really did, and I didn't get to. So what I thought right away is, again, I thought the announcers at the fight, they weren't being authentic. They weren't being authentic, and they just overreacted with what happened. And to me, it just seemed normal. I was like, this is great. They're going after each other. This is what I want to see. I don't want people to get along. Especially me. I don't know UFC as well as you and Shaf, right? I'm a new.
Would you consider yourself a casual fan, Mash?
100%.
As a casual fan, what was your impression as a casual fan? You're seeing a UFC event for the first time. What did you think? Oh my God! What was your impression? What did you come away with that night?
This was awesome. It was amazing. It was because here's the thing, right? You watch these boxing matches, right? All these Floyd Mayweather matches, right? They always get hyped up, right? What happens after the fight? Everyone's like, wow, Floyd Mayweather, he didn't seem that dangerous. Why does he fight like that? People don't realize, Floyd Mayweather, his style is so boring, and it doesn't appease, a casual fan, because he's very defensive, right? Whereas UFC, you have to go after the other guy, You have to go after the guy, and you have to give all your will, and there's just a adrenaline rush with it. And it was great. And this fight made me believe that very soon UFC will overtake boxing.
I mean, I think it already has. In my opinion.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I think, a full takeover. I think this was, in my opinion, the greatest thing that could happen to UFC. And I know that they're upset about it initially, and oh, this is disgusting. It's a black line of sport. But and I'll tell you why this was so great, and why so many people have a positive reaction to this. For some background, obviously there was a lot of stuff that Conor said, a lot of obviously racist comments during the press conferences, attacking his father, attacking Khabib's religion, attacking his manager, calling him a terrorist. There were so many personal attacks that really went overboard. And he was really being a bully, right? And
let's not even forget what happened prior to that.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Of course, in the Dolly incident. He almost killed people. He threw a dolly into a bus where there were other fighters who were cutting weight, and he almost killed people. Four fighters got injured. Multiple fights were canceled. He ruined people's lives with that. And he didn't get any punishment whatsoever. And you know what happened when you do that? You set a precedent. And that's why Khabib took it into his own hands, because he's like, all right, you guys are going to punish Khabib? Are you not going to punish Conor and his team, including Dylan Dennis, who was pretty much screaming from the corner, calling him, I think he was an effing Muslim rat. He was calling Khabib during the fight. And right after the fight, obviously he got into Conor's face, and he was saying, what now? And pretty much going crazy. And he looked straight at Dylan Dennis, through his mouthpiece. And I wasn't sure exactly who he was throwing that at. And then I heard Joe Rogan say Dylan Dennis. And then this guy flies over the cage. And then the iconic eagle leg drop kick on Dylan Dennis, which I will tell you, that jump and that kick made Khabib a superstar.
Yeah. Absolutely.
It made him a superstar because it was an iconic move. Everyone always looks at the still picture, and it's a picture and a move and an action of defending your honor, right? And that's why it resonates with so many people, and that's why it's a good story, right? Because it's someone who's like kind of facing up to the bully and because it's not like he was doing this to like a nice guy, right? Like it was doing it to a guy who was being a jerk. And, the whole story, everything kind of resonates with a lot of people, even the casual fans. And I think it was the greatest thing that could have happened to the UFC. And I think it made Khabib a superstar. And Mash, as you said, I think initially everybody was kind of like, oh my God, this is terrible, blah, blah, blah. But then once people kind of, settled down and got all the facts, everyone was like, you know what? That wasn't that bad. You know what? I kind of actually like it. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and if you listen to the analysis after UFC fight, not from Fox or anybody, everyone thought it was great. And one thing I don't understand, why did it seem like the UFC commentators did not want to bring up the bus incident? And why did it kind of seemed like they were just going after Khabib, and they totally ignored Conor's past, and they made him seem like he was some type of saint, when in actuality he's a hooligan.
I mean, you know what? It's not even the bus incident. Yeah, bus incident definitely happened, but he's that other Conor McGregor, doesn't have a clean history. Prior to the bus incident, for another organization called Bellator, he actually ran into the ring and tried tackling the referee.
Right.
Yeah. And Bellator isn't some like random little organization.
No.
They're UFC's main competitor. They're a real organization. That's a real event.
Yeah, that's a real offense to actually attack the referee. And he wasn't in the fight. It was basically one of his boys, Charlie Ward, got a knockout, and then Conor McGregor, being the attention whore he is, jumps into the cage in celebration, and then, which he wasn't supposed to do, the referee told him to get out of the cage, and instead he tried picking a fight with the referee, which you're not allowed to do. So that's one strike on him. 2, during the Nate Diaz press conference, he started throwing stuff at Nate Diaz and his team, which you're not allowed to do either. So Conor McGregor, in many instances prior to UFC 229, has broken all the code of conducts or code of ethics rules when it comes to this stuff.
Jose Aldo, too, if you remember that, he said a ton of racist stuff against Brazilians and how he was going to ride a chariot or through the favelas of Brazil, and he said a ton of racist stuff during the Mayweather McGregor promotions. He's had a long history, and he's never gotten in trouble for it. And
some of this stuff slides, but if anyone that knows Khabib Nurmagomedov knows that he's actually one of the most humble and honorable fighters. He's never known to trash talk anyone. But you don't mess with people from the Caucasus area of Russia, meaning Chechnya and Dagestan. These guys come from a war-torn area. They've seen gunshots, people getting murdered in front of them. These are different kind of animals, you could say. The minute you disrespect them, say anything about their father, their religion, you're not going to get away with that. And at that night, they showed you who the true, real gangsters are that night, I feel like.
Yeah. And, you know what's funny is, right, what happened after the fight, right? Khabib apologized. Did Conor apologize? Did he say anything?
Of course not.
I mean, Khabib took responsibility. He did do something wrong, right? And he said, listen, I did something wrong, and when I go home, my dad's gonna beat me, right? That's basically what he said. And he said the right thing, but I'm still waiting for Conor to apologize for everything he's done, and he's not going to, right? But he gets
God,
no. His bullshit is that I'm humble after defeat.
Yeah,
you better be humble after defeat. You look like a fool.
Yeah, you just got your face
That's
pounded.
you're humble after defeat.
Yeah, 100%. He just got his butt beat in front of the biggest audience in UFC.
Yeah, what else do you have to say? You've said everything nasty under the table possible prior to the fight. Of course, he got nothing left to say.
Yeah, and I think Khabib's post-fight press conference, which is pretty much just one rebuttal, I think was amazing. He
Yeah.
addressed it perfectly because he was like, "Look, I'm sorry to the Nevada Athletic Commission and sorry to Vegas, etc. But I don't understand why everyone's talking about me jumping over a cage. This guy almost killed people throwing dollies into a bus. Like, what are you guys talking about?" And it really touched a light on the hypocrisy of the UFC and Dana White of just kind of letting Conor pretty much all his terrible deeds slide and then trying to kill Khabib for what he did. And I mean, again, I know Dana White and all these guys are going to say this terrible thing. For the rematch, whenever that happens, you know they're going to use video of Khabib flying into the crowd with Dylan Dennis, 100%. So they can keep talking about trying to be the morality police now, but you know it's all BS.
You know, guys, we can make the argument that a lot of this is Dana White's fault.
It is his fault, 100%.
Starting with the promotions, he kind of instigated all of this stuff with the way he promoted this fight. By him promoting the fight the way he did, he kind of encouraged this behavior from Conor McGregor.
100%.
Do you guys agree with that?
Yeah, he set the precedent.
Of course, man. It's going to put more money in his pocket and the entire UFC. This is exactly what he wants.
And he's acting like, oh, this was horrible, but deep down inside, he's a scumbag. He's happy. It was the best thing that could have happened to him.
And can I just say something? When was the last time you ever remember a Sunday or a Monday morning in the sports world where the UFC dominated the news over the NFL, the MLB playoffs, any other sport? They absolutely dominated the headlines, even mainstream media as well. It's the first time I can ever remember that happening, and that is just nothing but positive for the UFC. So they can just stop the act and just enjoy the fruits of Khabib's labor of his flying jump kick on Dylan Dennis.
I mean, they're trying to say all this BS how we're trying to legitimize the sport. You're not legitimized. The sport is not legitimate. I'm sorry to say, the sport. You get big fights not based on merit. You get big fights based on popularity in the UFC.
Well, I'm going to say one thing just to defend Dana White, UFC. Not to defend him. No, not defend but just to see another perspective, right? Just to play devil's advocate, right? Because I don't think he's necessarily handling everything the right way. But you see what's happening with the NFL and all these concussion lawsuits and all this stuff. Do you think the reason he's saying all this is so he doesn't get sued?
I mean, I think he's saying it just because maybe, that's partly to do with it. Right. And because he jumped into, first off, he didn't really jump into the crowd. He just jumped at Dylan Dennis.
Right.
So that didn't really happen. And then the guys that jumped into the cage, that was also the cage. So no fans really attacked or anything like that. But yeah, I think he's trying to protect himself, right? That's really what it comes down to. And he's trying to do it while also capitalizing it, off of it in the most shrewd way that he can. Which is why he's trying to keep them all high ground. But as Shaf said, he's trying to, on one hand, try to kind of legitimize the sport, but let's be real, this is basically real life WWE, right?
Of course.
That's what this is. So they can keep trying to act like this is legitimate. And hey, maybe they can get to that, but you got to play fair to everybody. You can't just let some guy almost kill multiple people and injure guys and do all this stuff that Conor does, and then expect everybody else to fall in line. It's not going to happen. But yeah, it's definitely ridiculous, and it's been a huge topic of debate. And I'll tell you what's the next topic of debate that a lot of people talk about is who these guys should play next, for Khabib and Conor. And I guess I'll ask Shaf. I'll ask you. And for me, I think it's pretty straightforward. For Conor first, do you think he deserves a rematch with Khabib because he's already called up Dana White and asked for one? Do you think he deserves a rematch?
So, does he deserve a rematch?
Yeah.
Absolutely not, because it was not a competitive fight.
Not at all.
However, this is the UFC, and they are for profit. They're trying to make money. They do, like I said, they want to say they're a legitimate sport, but they're going to do whatever it takes to sell the most pay-per-views. And what's gonna sell the most pay-per-views is a rematch with Conor McGregor and Khabib. And now they have more material for promotions, unfortunately, now.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I don't think...
Does he deserve it? Absolutely not. The guy I believe deserves a fight with Khabib is Tony Ferguson, because he's got the biggest win streak in that division, and he's basically wiped out that entire division. He's fought everybody except for Khabib Nurmagomedov. That's a fight to make.
Matt, from your viewpoint, since you're a little bit more a casual fan, and you're kind of more of the new fans that are coming in, right, because of what happened, right. Would you want to see a rematch between them two?
100%. I don't even care. I don't think I even care if Khabib messes him up again. I want to see that again. I don't care if Conor has no chance. Especially because, right, and I love Conor too, don't get me wrong, but I want to see Khabib dominate. And I think a lot of people want to see that too. And then there's also, on the flip side, there's all those Conor, supporters who are like, oh no, he can win, even though he clearly can't. So, I think regardless, the hype and the anticipation, will be enticing enough where it will get casual fans like me to watch, regardless if it's competitive or not.
I totally understand that viewpoint, and I figured that would be the viewpoint of a lot of people. What I'll say is this, because yes, I do agree that, it'd probably be good for pay-per-view sales, etc. But I mean, at the end of the day, here's another thing. Conor McGregor has a huge fan base, right? If he goes in there in, let's say, 4 or 5 months or 6 months and gets destroyed by Khabib, he's done. And what benefit does that have to the UFC, right? And let's be, as Shaf said, dude, so Conor McGregor in his last 4 UFC fights, he's 2-2. And if you include the Mayweather fight, he's 2-3. Yeah. Tony Ferguson hasn't lost a fight since 2012. Yeah. I mean, like, what are we even talking about? These guys are by far, Tony Ferguson and Khabib are by far the most dominant guys in the division. And he 100% deserves a shot. And I think there will be legitimate interest for that fight. I think for UFC 223, there was a lot of interest. And I think what they would be smart to do is to have Conor at least get another fight, like I would say with Nate Diaz. I think that's a perfect setup fight.
Agreed.
Because they had the 2 fights where they were split at 1-on-1. They were both amazing fights, and I think their styles kind of clash with each other well. And I think that would be the best matchup for Conor and for the UFC, because at least it gives him a fight to, if he wins, that gives him some time to kind of get his feet underneath him, because he's been out of the game for a bit, and let Khabib fight Tony, and whoever wins that, let them fight. Whoever is the winner of that, let them fight Conor, or the winner of the Nate Diaz Conor fight. I think that's what they should do, but again, because of pay-per-view sales and what the fans think, I'm worried that they'll probably go straight to another Conor rematch. Which isn't the right thing to do, but Dana White never does the right thing. So he does the thing that's best for money. Yeah. Let's be completely honest.
No, definitely. And I think one other thing that should be mentioned about this fight in general, I just felt like the whole time, you guys know better than I do, that Conor wasn't as focused or as engaged on this fight as Khabib was. Like, Khabib, I feel like, has been preparing for this fight for like 5 years. Whereas I feel like Conor is focused on just being a celebrity, partying, doing a ton of coke, and just getting into trouble. I think really that's just his main focus in life, just being a celebrity. And when you have that $100 million in the bank, I just think it's very hard to keep that competitive edge. Especially someone like Khabib, who lives and breathes for this, and doesn't have any celebrity until this fight, right? Like, I think this is a fight where people are like, wait, this dude fought a bear? Like, really? I didn't even know. Like, people are finding out who Khabib is now.
Yeah, it's a great observation, because I did think that Conor, when he did walk into the ring, and he usually has he has this aura about him of confidence, right? When he's kind of strutting around and walking around, and he didn't have that when he came to the ring. He looked very timid. He kind of looked pale. I know a lot of people noticed that he wasn't even sweating, so he wasn't even really warming up in the locker room, which is strange. You rarely see a guy come out dry right into the ring and not warmed up. And yeah, I think he definitely fought timid. As I said, he wasn't stepping in and out of range well with Khabib. He was kind of stepping up to him and not really doing anything else. Kept his hands down. It was definitely a shaky performance from his side. But again, I think it's just having to deal with Khabib shooting and taking him down. He was just way too worried about it. And I think that just, everyone talked about Khabib, Conor getting to Khabib's head. I think Khabib actually got to Conor's head and it showed during the fight.
100%.
Yeah, because for once, whenever he does trash talk, Khabib didn't really respond to this trash talk. He was kind of stoic the whole time, which he's not used to. He's used to getting a reaction out of his opponents, and in this case, Khabib didn't really give him a reaction.
Yeah, he didn't, and he did give a reaction, but he waited till after
after the fight was over.
After the fight to act like a complete savage, which everybody loved. Yeah, it was. I mean, that's what I'm saying. He did get into Khabib's head, but Khabib was just disciplined enough to just keep it under wraps and keep it controlled until the second Herb Dean stopped the fight, and he was like, "All right, now I'm gonna just go absolutely ham," and he definitely did, man. But it was an amazing weekend for both diehard fans and even as I said, casual fans like Mash. I mean, I think this weekend definitely got a lot of new fans, a lot of new interest, and I think it was definitely good for the sport as a whole. And speaking of that, there's UFC 230 coming up. And, oh, God. And that's the thing, Matt. Are you going to watch UFC 230?
100%. I've been watching the last few specials, right? So I've been, gearing up towards this, and now I'm, fully hooked. This wasn't my first fight. So now I'm, fully hooked. I want to see 230. Even if 230 is not that great, I'm in it, because I'm waiting for the next 229. Even if I have to watch a few bad specials or not as good, I'll wait for it. I'll watch as many as I could.
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm worried about.
Granted, someone else pays for the pay-per-view.
100%.
As long as Mash isn't paying for it.
Yeah.
As long as someone got him fried chicken.
Yeah, man. I'm good company, man. You know what I'm saying?
But yeah. As long as someone's picking up that pay-per-view. But that's kind of also what I'm worried about because for people that have been following UFC 230, it's just been a disaster on Dana White's part. Right. And look, I'll give him credit because UFC 229 was great, and it ended up being an underrated card that really lived up to the expectations and exceeded it actually. But UFC 230, they didn't have this event is the first week in November. They didn't announce the headliner event till last night, and it's Derrick Lewis who just fought on Saturday. Who's going to face Daniel Cormier as the main event. Actually, and mind you, so go ahead.
They did mention a headliner, actually, but it got such negative press, they changed it. The
Sijara Eubanks, right?
Yeah, Sijara Eubanks, who Joe Rogan said, I'm a commentator UFC, I don't even know who that is, versus Valentina Shevchenko for the women's flyweight title. And it got such negative press because first of all, this card isn't in Omaha, Nebraska. This is in Madison Square Garden, New York City, the mecca of combat sports. You can't give a headliner like that in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and another thing I don't understand is all right, I understand that was for the flyweight title, but you have Luke Rockhold versus Chris Weidman, and then you had you did have Nate Diaz versus Poirier. Of course, that got canceled because Poirier got injured. Which adds to the disaster. So Nate Diaz is off the card. So I don't know why they thought that was a good idea, but they're going with Daniel Cormier versus Derrick Lewis. And before we get to that, by the way, Sijara Eubanks, just as an update, breaking news, she's been added back to UFC 230, and she's facing Roxanne Modafferi, who I also have no idea who that is. So I don't know what
in the Fight Pass prelims, from being headliner to the Fight Pass prelims. How the sport turns on you.
Oh my goodness, I don't know what they're doing. I mean, this is desperate, right? I don't. And this is the thing about the Derrick Lewis Daniel Cormier fight, right? first off, I don't even think this is a good fight to begin with. But
terrible.
second off, Derrick Lewis and his post-fight interview was great.
Yeah.
But he literally just admitted to you that he's not ready for a title match because he needs to get his cardio up. And you're going to put him in a title match against Daniel Cormier 3 weeks from now?
I mean, Derrick Lewis is going to get his payday, and he's what we were just talking about, because he was on such a big card. He's a benefactor in all this. Now he got his exposure, and now he's headlining the card. Good for him.
But he literally got beaten up by Volkov for 3 rounds. I don't even know, because he's probably gonna take at least 1 week to heal up minimum, right?
And Sohel, let's not forget that he barely beat Francis Ngannou in that last fight.
I know, it was the worst fight I've ever seen.
And before that Francis Ngannou fight, he lost. So I don't know if he's worthy of a title shot. But then again, this comes back to us talking about how the UFC is not a legitimate sport. Again, they're giving the title shot to a guy who's hot in the media right now, who's popular.
And who said my balls is hot after he won his fight because he took off his shorts and gained 1 million Instagram followers. That's what it comes down to, right?
Yeah, it's all, again, a popularity contest, not based on merit.
And it's the first time, and he had an interview, I think today, or it was yesterday, and he literally said, he's like, yeah, I'm happy to get the opportunity, but I honestly don't know why I didn't give it to Stipe Miocic. I thought he should have got the shot. Whoever says that? Whoever says, yeah, somebody else should have got the title shot versus Cormier, but I guess they gave it to me, I'll take the payday. I mean, that was basically what he said. And
I love the honesty.
Honesty is definitely not something he lacks, man. But yeah, that's the thing with the UFC and Mash. I hope guys like you too, who are definitely getting more interested in the sport. I hope UFC 230 does end up being a good card. Just because I don't want them to lose the momentum. And to be completely honest, this is a very poorly organized event. And I know Dana White's been getting a lot of heat for this. But it's just, they've been so disorganized when it comes to that. You know, UFC 230 again. I hope it ends up being a good card and an enjoyable fight for you guys and for I guess fans around the country and around the world. And yeah, but hey, man, amazing weekend. It was really enjoyable. I will say this for myself, and I don't know what you guys feel, but for me, being a Giants fan, when the Giants won in Super Bowl 2011, this is the best I felt after a sporting event since then. I mean, it was that exhilarating for me. I was so happy after Khabib won, and it was really awesome. And hopefully they can kind of replicate that excitement going forward.
And me being a Jets fan, I've never had a good year.
Yeah, so
this was like equivalent to the Jets winning the Super Bowl with Khabib's performance for me.
Yeah, no, definitely. I'm a Jets fan too, so I know how it feels.
Yeah, and I'll say this too, right? Because like we're all Muslims and stuff. Dude, us as Muslims, we've just been taking losses for years, right? We've just been losing in every which way. Like nothing really good has been happening, and finally we get a guy who kind of stands and represents all the good for Muslims around the world and is a good guy in general. Although his actions post fight may have not necessarily reflected that, but I think he definitely represented us well. And it was really exciting to see someone kind of do things the right way and kind of represent us well. And it was definitely really exciting. But yeah, man, hey, it was awesome kind of recapping everything with you guys. UFC 229 and of course UFC 230 coming up in a couple of weeks. And we'll definitely have a preview show as well, week leading up to UFC 230. So you guys listening, be sure to look out for that episode. And yeah, man, thank you guys for taking time out. This is awesome, man. Let's definitely do it again.
Yeah, man, it was great.
Mash, we talk about UFC, we talk about fantasy football. can you tell the audience that's not all we're about? What else can they look forward to weeks coming?
Weeks coming. Well, we cover all sports. We're also going to do a lifestyle podcast at some point. Probably talk about dating and all that type of stuff.
Yes.
So we're gonna go more into it. That's gonna be definitely controversial. So we'll see. But I think, and we're gonna try. It's not gonna just be dudes. We're gonna try to get a girl on that episode as well. So
Who's the special guy guest you're gonna have?
guy guest? You mean girl guest?
No, I'm saying like who are you gonna invite? Which guy are you gonna?
Well,
invite?
you have to be on it. You definitely.
That's what I figured.
I know you guys have a
You're the
gang
pro.
of like. Don't you guys have like a gang of like of Tinder like studs? Just kind of you guys kind of gang up together and do your pictures and what is it? Snapchat?
No, Instagram. Shaf takes all my Instagram photos for like a few of us. Like I have 4 photos on Instagram. Shaf has taken all of them, but I need like 4 more. I gotta start taking more. I've been slacking, so I gotta buy some new suits and buy some new threads and start taking some pics.
I definitely.
We'll get to that. That's what you all can look forward to weeks coming. We got lifestyle.
Yeah, we got a bunch of stuff. We'll cover everything in this world, and we have between us 3 and a few other people, we have the knowledge to cover everything.
Definitely, for sure, man. Looking forward to it. I unfortunately cannot add too much to that because I'm married and I'm not trying to get my stick. So I'll just listen and not commentate at all.
Maybe guys. I mean, I'm trying to get married, so maybe I shouldn't be too involved.
Dude, man, maybe you'll help.
Want to get married one day? This might hurt me.
Nah, this will help, man. This will definitely help. Bring up your brand, man. Your popularity will go up. Your Instagram followers will go up. It'll help, man.
But it might be in a negative way.
Nah, man. All publicity is good publicity.
As we saw with the UFC event.
Exactly. And with that, we are going to close up the show. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you all enjoyed and enjoy the rest of your week. Thank you guys.
All right, peace.
Peace.
Later.
See you, Shaf.